The United Kingdom has always been a melting pot of cultures, attracting individuals from all corners of the globe. However, recent years have witnessed a surge in migration, prompting the government to implement stricter immigration policies. In a controversial move set to take effect in June 2024, the UK government has announced a new deportation policy aimed at removing individuals deemed ineligible to remain in the country. This essay will delve into the intricacies of this new policy, exploring its potential impact on various migrant groups and the broader society. The UK's history is intricately interwoven with migration, shaping its cultural landscape and economic prosperity. From the arrival of the Romans to the influx of immigrants from former colonies, migration has consistently played a pivotal role in the nation's development. However, the recent surge in migration, driven by a multitude of factors including globalization, conflict, and economic disparities, has presented the UK with unprecedented challenges. The government's response, as embodied in the new deportation policy, reflects a delicate balancing act between managing migration flows and upholding humanitarian principles. The decision to implement stricter immigration policies is not unique to the UK. Across the globe, nations are grappling with the complexities of migration, seeking ways to regulate borders while addressing the needs of vulnerable populations. The UK's approach, however, has sparked significant debate, raising concerns about the potential impact on human rights, social cohesion, and economic stability. As the UK embarks on this new chapter in its migration policy, it is imperative to consider the far-reaching consequences for individuals, communities, and the nation as a whole. The new deportation policy, announced in early 2024, marks a significant shift in the UK's approach to immigration. The policy empowers the government to deport individuals who have entered the country illegally or have overstayed their visas, regardless of their circumstances or length of residence. This includes individuals who have built lives, families, and careers in the UK, contributing to the social and economic fabric of the nation. The policy's broad scope has raised concerns about its potential to disrupt lives and undermine the principles of fairness and due process. One of the most contentious aspects of the new policy is its disregard for the individual circumstances of those facing deportation. The policy does not differentiate between individuals who have deliberately violated immigration laws and those who have fallen victim to circumstance or exploitation. For instance, individuals who have been trafficked or coerced into entering the country illegally face the same fate as those who have knowingly overstayed their visas. This lack of nuance has sparked outrage among human rights groups, who argue that the policy fails to adequately protect vulnerable individuals. The policy's implementation is expected to be swift and uncompromising, with the government aiming to deport thousands of individuals in the coming months. Charter flights have been arranged to transport deportees to their countries of origin, often without sufficient notice or opportunity to appeal their cases. This expedited approach has raised concerns about the potential for wrongful deportations, separating families and disrupting lives. The government has defended the policy's urgency, citing the need to deter illegal immigration and maintain control over its borders. While the new deportation policy primarily targets individuals who have entered the country illegally or have overstayed their visas, its implications extend beyond this immediate group. The policy has created a climate of uncertainty and fear among legal migrants, who worry that they too could become targets of the government's crackdown on immigration. This fear has been exacerbated by the policy's broad language and the government's aggressive rhetoric on immigration. Legal migrants who have followed the rules and contributed to the UK's economy and society now find themselves questioning their place in the country. The policy's impact on legal migrants is multifaceted, affecting their sense of belonging, economic opportunities, and access to essential services. Many legal migrants report feeling unwelcome and ostracized, as if their contributions to the UK are no longer valued. The fear of deportation has led some to limit their social interactions, withdraw from community activities, and avoid seeking help when needed. This self-imposed isolation can have detrimental effects on mental health, social cohesion, and economic productivity. Moreover, the policy has created obstacles for legal migrants seeking to secure employment, housing, and healthcare. Employers, landlords, and healthcare providers, wary of the government's scrutiny, are increasingly reluctant to engage with individuals who may be perceived as vulnerable to deportation. This discrimination, whether intentional or subconscious, can have a devastating impact on the livelihoods and well-being of legal migrants, forcing them to the margins of society. For individuals residing in the UK without proper authorization, the new deportation policy presents a formidable threat. The policy's broad scope encompasses a wide range of individuals, from recent arrivals to long-term residents who have established deep roots in the country. Regardless of their individual circumstances or contributions to the UK, these individuals now face the imminent possibility of being uprooted from their lives and deported to countries they may barely remember or have never known. The policy's impact on illegal migrants is immediate and profound, forcing them to live in constant fear of detection and deportation. Many have been driven into hiding, living in precarious conditions and avoiding contact with authorities, even when in need of essential services such as healthcare or education. This fear permeates their daily lives, affecting their mental health, social interactions, and ability to contribute to the economy. The policy's shadow looms large, casting a pall over their existence. The threat of deportation also disrupts family life, separating parents from children, spouses from partners, and siblings from one another. The policy's disregard for family ties has sparked outrage among human rights groups, who argue that it violates fundamental human rights and inflicts unnecessary suffering on individuals and families. The forced separation of families has long-lasting consequences, traumatizing children, severing social bonds, and perpetuating cycles of poverty and instability. The new deportation policy has far-reaching consequences for the UK's care sector, which relies heavily on migrant workers to fill critical roles in hospitals, care homes, and community settings. The policy's broad scope encompasses many care workers who have been providing essential services to the UK's aging population and vulnerable communities. The potential loss of these skilled and dedicated workers could have a devastating impact on the quality and accessibility of care services, exacerbating existing staffing shortages and compromising the well-being of those in need. The policy's chilling effect on the care sector is already being felt, as migrant care workers fearing deportation are leaving their jobs and seeking opportunities in countries with more welcoming immigration policies. This exodus of skilled workers is creating a void in the care sector, leaving hospitals and care homes struggling to fill vacancies and maintain adequate staffing levels. The consequences for patients and residents are dire, as they face longer wait times, reduced quality of care, and increased risks to their health and safety. The government's justification for the policy's impact on the care sector centers on the need to prioritize British workers and reduce reliance on migrant labor. However, critics argue that this approach fails to acknowledge the reality of the UK's labor market, where a significant shortage of care workers exists. The policy's implementation is likely to worsen this shortage, forcing care providers to rely on less qualified or inexperienced staff, compromising the quality of care and jeopardizing the well-being of those who depend on it. The UK's new deportation policy has drawn sharp criticism from human rights groups, who condemn it as a violation of fundamental human rights and a betrayal of the UK's commitment to international law. These groups argue that the policy's broad scope, disregard for individual circumstances, and expedited implementation threaten to undermine the principles of due process, fairness, and compassion that should guide immigration policies. They have called on the government to reconsider the policy, urging it to adopt a more humane and nuanced approach that respects the rights and dignity of all individuals, regardless of their immigration status. Human rights groups have mobilized on multiple fronts to challenge the policy, filing legal challenges, organizing protests, and raising awareness about its potential consequences. They have documented cases of individuals wrongly targeted for deportation, highlighting the policy's flaws and the urgent need for reform. Their efforts have garnered support from a broad coalition of civil society organizations, faith leaders, and concerned citizens, who believe that the UK's immigration policies should reflect its values of fairness, compassion, and respect for human rights. The government has defended the policy as a necessary measure to control immigration and protect national security. However, human rights groups argue that the policy's harsh measures are disproportionate to the perceived threat and will likely have unintended consequences. They warn that the policy could foster a climate of fear and distrust, erode social cohesion, and damage the UK's reputation as a champion of human rights. They call on the government to engage in a meaningful dialogue with civil society, seeking solutions that address the complexities of immigration while upholding the UK's commitments to human rights. The UK government has released a series of statistics aimed at justifying the new deportation policy and demonstrating its effectiveness in curbing illegal immigration. These statistics highlight the number of individuals apprehended for immigration violations, the number of deportation orders issued, and the number of individuals successfully deported since the policy's implementation. The government claims that these figures demonstrate the policy's success in deterring illegal immigration and maintaining control over the UK's borders. However, critics argue that these statistics present an incomplete and misleading picture of the policy's impact. They point out that the statistics fail to account for the number of individuals wrongly targeted for deportation, the number of families separated, and the long-term consequences of the policy on social cohesion and the UK's economy. They accuse the government of cherry-picking data to support its narrative while ignoring the policy's human cost. Moreover, critics argue that the government's focus on statistics obscures the underlying factors driving immigration, such as conflict, poverty, and climate change. They call on the government to address these root causes, rather than resorting to punitive measures that punish individuals seeking safety and opportunity. They argue that a more comprehensive and compassionate approach to immigration is needed, one that balances the need for border control with the UK's commitments to human rights and international law. The new deportation policy has had a profound impact on the lives of migrants in the UK, both legal and illegal, creating a climate of fear, uncertainty, and despair. Many migrants report feeling betrayed by the government, which they perceive as turning its back on them after they have contributed to the UK's economy and society. They express a sense of disillusionment and anger, feeling that their rights and dignity are being disregarded. Migrants who have been targeted for deportation share harrowing accounts of their experiences, describing the trauma of being separated from their families, the fear of being sent back to countries they barely remember, and the uncertainty of their future. They speak of the emotional toll of living in constant fear, the difficulty of maintaining relationships, and the challenges of accessing essential services. Their stories provide a stark reminder of the human cost of the new deportation policy. Migrants who remain in the UK, both legal and illegal, express a sense of unease and vulnerability, fearing that they too could become targets of the government's crackdown on immigration. They describe the difficulty of living with the constant threat of deportation, the strain it places on their mental health, and the challenges of planning for the future. Their experiences highlight the far-reaching consequences of the policy, which extends beyond those directly targeted for deportation, creating a climate of fear and uncertainty for all migrants in the UK. The new deportation policy has faced numerous legal challenges, with lawyers and human rights groups arguing that it violates both domestic and international law. They have highlighted the policy's inconsistencies, its disregard for individual circumstances, and its potential to result in wrongful deportations. Some legal challenges have focused on the policy's lack of clarity, arguing that its broad language leaves it open to misinterpretation and abuse. One significant legal loophole concerns the rights of individuals who have established strong ties to the UK, such as long-term residents, those with British-born children, or those who have made significant contributions to the UK's economy or society. While the policy claims to prioritize these factors, critics argue that it fails to provide clear guidelines for how these ties should be assessed, leaving individuals vulnerable to arbitrary decisions. Another legal challenge centers on the rights of asylum seekers and refugees who are entitled to protection under international law. The policy's expedited deportation process raises concerns that genuine asylum seekers may be wrongly deported without having their claims properly assessed. lawyers and human rights groups are working to ensure that the rights of asylum seekers and refugees are upheld, challenging the legality of deportations that violate international law. The UK's new deportation policy has sparked significant controversy, raising concerns about its impact on human rights, social cohesion, and the UK's reputation as a welcoming and tolerant nation. The policy's broad scope, disregard for individual circumstances, and expedited implementation have drawn criticism from human rights groups, legal experts, and concerned citizens. The policy's consequences extend beyond those directly targeted for deportation, creating a climate of fear and uncertainty for all migrants in the UK. The policy's long-term impact on the UK's economy, society, and international standing remains to be seen. However, the immediate consequences are clear. Families are being separated, lives are being disrupted, and the UK's commitment to human rights is being called into question. The government's justification for the policy centers on the need to control immigration and protect national security. However, critics argue that the policy's harsh measures are disproportionate to the perceived threat and will likely have unintended consequences. The new deportation policy represents a significant shift in the UK's approach to immigration, signaling a more restrictive and less compassionate stance. As the policy's implications continue to unfold, it remains to be seen whether the UK will be able to reconcile its desire for stricter border control with its commitments to human rights and its long-standing tradition of welcoming those seeking refuge and opportunity. The policy's legacy will depend on the UK's ability to find a balance between these competing priorities, ensuring that its immigration policies reflect its values of fairness, compassion, and respect for human dignity.